What's the first thing you think about when you hear The Exorcist?
My name is Anna, and the first thing that I think of when I think of The Exorcist is the super haunting theme. I believe it's composed by Mike Oldfield, and it's called Tubular Bells. It just really sets the tone for the whole movie with this haunting, creepy vibe, and it's just so memorable. Actually, when I first got an iPod in 2006 or whatever, I downloaded Tubular Bells because I loved it so much. It's just such a good theme.
When I think about The Exorcist, the first thing that comes to my mind is when Reagan's character comes down the stairs when she's crawling on her backwards. She looks like a freaking crab. That's actually one of my favorite scenes. And that's, like I said, anytime anybody asks me anything if I've seen The Exorcist, that's the first thing that comes to my mind.
What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Alex, aka Fritzky. That's the name of my YouTube channel I run. Thank you, Jen, for having me on and welcoming me in to talk about what I think is really one of the most important films, not just in the horror genre, but just in film history, period. For the time, I genuinely think if we're looking at when the film was released and the time period / era when it was made, I genuinely think that movie was very ahead of its time.
Whether you're a fan of The Exorcist or not, there's no denying that it has a huge cult following and it's widely regarded as one of the scariest movies ever made. Tonight in Behind the Movie, I'll be talking about the events that inspired the films, some interesting behind-the-scene facts, and end with a discussion where I'll be joined by my two awesome friends, Denise and Daniela, to discuss, is The Exorcist really the scariest movie ever made?
I want to go home. I want to see if it's going to make me throw up.
Man, that is one of the most grossest movies in the world. I ain't never took my coat and hood it over my face like that.
I thought it was very powerful. Just turned my mind.
Terrible. But I just found it really horrible. I just had to come out. I couldn't take it anymore.
People are extremely depressed by this.
Hello everyone and welcome to my very first episode of Behind the Movie. I'm your host, Jennifer Vega, and I love movies. In this podcast, you can expect all sorts of movie-related content from deep discussions on your favorite movies, and we'll be diving into interesting facts about each of them and some stuff that people might not know about them. If you like the sound of that, then grab a snack, sit back, and enjoy because we have a lot coming in this episode. And episodes will be posted every Friday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time on all listening platforms including Spotify, Apple Music, and many more, and they will also be posted on YouTube every Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time if anybody is interested in looking at some visuals that I have to show. So, how did the story even start?
When you ask people, as I did this week on Facebook, what's the scariest film you've ever seen? The most common answer is, of course, The Exorcist. Why does this film continue to fascinate all these years later, and why does it retain its power to frighten people so?
Well, there are two reasons, of course. The first one is going to sound like an advertisement for myself and for Billy Friedkin, but it's a wonderfully carpentered and told tale, filled with suspense. And the second is that it's not, well, there are three reasons. The second would be that when you see it in the theater, it's a community experience that you want to share without you've really never seen it until you see it in the theater. And the third, of course, is the purpose for which I wrote the novel in the first place, which was apostolic.
The Exorcist is actually based on the 1971 novel of the same name that was inspired by the real-life case of the exorcism of Roland Doe. The case goes as follows. In the late 1940s, priests of the Roman Catholic Church performed exorcisms on an anonymous boy who was given the pseudonym Roland Doe. However, later analysis by paranormal skeptics have concluded that Doe was likely a mentally ill teenager acting out, as some events likely to have occurred, such as words being carved on skin, were such that could have been faked by himself. The novel changed several details of the case, such as changing the gender of the allegedly possessed victim from a boy to a girl and changing the victim's age as well. This case has not just inspired this movie, which is something that I didn't know about beforehand. It's obviously inspired the movie The Exorcist, but also a movie that came out in the year 2000 called Possessed, and there have been several documentaries done about the case as well. The director, William Friedkin, he says that the movie depicts everything that could have been verified by those involved. To make this movie, he also allowed diaries of the priests involved in the original case, the doctors, and he even discussed the events with Doe's aunt, therefore making it really research-based and actually based on true events. And the writer of the book The Exorcist, that was inspired by the real case, William Peter Blatty, came back to write the film's screenplay, and I would say that that's a really smart decision because he already knew the material beforehand, so it makes the movie seem more realistic. And when the casting began, several actresses were considered for the role of Regan, but they ended up with Linda Blair, which I think was a perfect choice. I really liked her in this movie, and she was a less known actress at the time, and the studio Warner Bros. Actually feared that because nobody really knew who the main character was going to be played by. And personally, I think when horror movies cast less known actors, it feels more real, because another movie that did this that's very popular is The Blair Witch Project. I feel like it adds to the realism of everything and the authenticity that I think this movie and other horror movies have, so I think that was a really smart choice of the production team for The Exorcist to get an unknown actress. And this is where it gets interesting, because some actors that were interested in playing Father Karras were Jack Nicholson, Paul Newman, and at one point even Stacy Keach was signed for the role. And this one was the coolest part about figuring out who was supposed to be casted in what, but guess who was even considered to play Chris McNeil in the film, which is Regan's mother in the movie? Audrey Hepburn. Yup, Audrey Hepburn. She said she was willing to take on the role, but only if the movie could be shot in Rome, since she had just moved there with her husband. Since that would raise the price of the production considerably, Friedkin, the director, was moved on to another actress, even though he originally intended for Audrey Hepburn to be cast. I was just thinking, imagine Audrey being in this movie, because I'm just now getting into some of her movies and I haven't really seen her in a horror movie. I don't know if she's been in a horror movie, but I think it would have definitely been interesting if she had been in one. And ultimately the movie ended up casting its entire movie, obviously, and in my opinion they did a really great job because they have an incredible set of actors, including Linda Blair, Jason Miller, Ellen Burstyn, and Max von Sydow. And a lot of people claim that this movie is haunted and actually say that this entire movie has a big curse on it, and that's because production for this movie included scary and unfortunate situations for the cast and crew. Over the course of the production, 9 people died who were associated with this movie, and the ironic part is that 2 actors that died before the movie was released, and the ironic part is that their characters happened to both die in the movie. Linda Blair and Max von Sydow lost members of their family as they were shooting this movie, and even the son of Jason Miller, who plays Father Karras, was almost killed in a motorcycle accident. And this next one is always giving me goosebumps ever since I was a little girl, knowing about The Exorcist and stuff, because the set of Regan McNeil's home, which is the possessed protagonist, was actually burnt down.
I do remember getting a phone call one morning at 4 a.m. Don't bother to come to work today. And I said, why, am I fired? And he said, no, but the set has just burned to the ground. It was 4 o'clock in the morning, and the night watchman saw smoke coming out the door of the soundstage. Interestingly, it was while we were shooting the exorcism scene. I will say one other thing I thought was strange. We made the statue of Pazuzu in Burbank, in the workshop at the Burbank studios. It was 15 feet tall, and with the wing spread, it was about 8 feet wide. And it was put into a box and shipped by a very famous group of ex-fighter pilots that started a shipping company after World War II, the Flying Tigers. And we had this statue of Pazuzu addressed to Warner Brothers, care of the Ba'athist Party in Mosul, Iraq. And somehow or other, it got to Denmark. But that is probably the only other thing I think was strange.
Filming had only just begun when a fire destroyed almost the entire set. The entire set was destroyed except for one room. Somehow Regan's bedroom was left completely untouched. It's almost as if the fire got everything but her room. And production because of this was stopped for about 6 weeks. And that's so crazy to me that it burned pretty much everything except the room that the possession and stuff was happening in. Just crazy in my opinion. And because of this event that happened with the fire and all of the deaths that had been going on surrounding the movie, this caused the director to ask a reverend to perform an exorcism on set. And at first the reverend was like, what is even the point of this? But after hearing stories from the crew, he agreed to perform a blessing on the set. And Reverend Birmingham is said to have also spoken to the cast and crew, who by this point had grown incredibly uncomfortable by this set. And I totally get them feeling uncomfortable because not only were creepy stuff happening all around, but also some of the actors were very mistreated, especially Ellen Bernstein, who played Chris McNeil. She suffered a permanent spinal injury while filming, and personally, if it happened today, I feel like she could have totally sued them.
I had a rig around my midriff with a wire coming out the back, and the stuntman was pulling. I said, "Billy, he's pulling me too hard. I can get hurt." And Billy said, "Well, it has to look real." I said, "I understand, but I'm telling you, I could get hurt." And the stuntman was standing there listening to this, and Billy said to him, "Okay, don't pull her so hard." But as I turned away, I felt them exchange a look. You see me hit, and you see me reach for my back. I screamed in horrendous pain. Billy motioned to Owen to tilt the camera down on me. And I saw it, and I was so furious and said, "Turn the effing camera off," because I couldn't stand that he was willing to just get a quick shot of it before they called the ambulance, you know. It was way beyond what anyone needs to do to make a movie.
The director went kind of to an old Hollywood directing style where he went through extraordinary lengths to manipulate the actors to get really realistic reactions, which I've never been a fan of. Sure, it looks great, but I think if you're gonna really hurt your actors, then it's not really worth it. And whether these odd occurrences were because of a curse or not, it still makes it creepy to think about all of these horrific things that happened when making a horror movie based on true events. I wonder what it was like for them back then, because honestly, it's terrifying. As you guys heard in that video, she had a few things to say, and I agree with her. It's not worth it to get the scene. Now, those that know me know that I'm an artist, and I can't believe I never knew this, but one of the movie's most famous scenes is Father Merrin's arrival, and it's that really awesome scene when he's in front of the house in the light post, and he's dressed in a suit. And it's like what's been used to promote this movie for year after year after year. And this shot was actually inspired by the 1954 painting Empire of Light by René Magritte. And although production had several ups and downs and ended up taking twice as long and costing twice as much as the initial budget, the movie ended up originally releasing in 24 theaters. And Warner Bros. Didn't really expect much from this movie because they just didn't think it was gonna soar as high as it did. And here's where everything gets really interesting, and this is why a lot of people think it's the scariest movie of all time, because the initial reactions are crazy.
Basically, the time period that this film was released in was at a time where, unlike now, where possession movies and cult, Satan, demonic type, morbid, that subgenre of horror is way more common now, there really was no such thing back in the really before the Cold War era, really. And so part of the reason why the film Rosemary's Baby did as well as it did is because there simply had been nothing like it before. Rosemary's Baby centers around a full-grown woman. She's an adult, and she is a regular American citizen. And what was really scary about that film was that, she was just an everyday, ordinary lady. Now, what The Exorcist did that made it jump up on the scale was it went from a center of a full-grown woman to an innocent 12-year-old child. What was scary about that was the fact that it was breaking the innocence, and it was scary to think of something so evil preying on someone so innocent. And that's what was really scary, especially to parents at the time. That was their worst nightmare, especially seeing as how most of America at the time was Christian or Catholic. That really was probably really terrifying and every parent's worst nightmare. I would say it belongs up there in one of the most disturbing / scariest films ever made. Then the other thing I think this film does amazingly is, again, the fact that it's really ahead of its time, is the acting. Everyone gives a good performance, but Linda Blair, obviously the most well-known and iconic role in the movie, gives one of the most well-known and iconic performances, not just in the horror genre, but in film ever. And for those of you who have seen the movie, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. It really does genuinely feel after a while that you're not watching a little girl anymore. You feel like you're watching a monster. You feel like you're watching a demon, a devil, whatever, however you want to word it. Eventually you forget that it's a little girl who's acting. You genuinely fall for it. And even if you don't believe in, spirits and stuff, you genuinely have to admit that it's an amazing and phenomenal acting performance. And I would put it in my top 10 acting performances of all time, and hands down the best child acting performance ever. Ahead of its time, disturbing, some of the most morbid imagery ever put on screen. Even to this day, I think The Exorcist is not just one of the best horror films ever made, but one of the best films ever made, period.
And apparently in the UK, one woman even passed out and broke her jaw, and she sued the studio, and people said it was because the movie has hidden subliminal messages that made her faint, and other people as well. And instead of me saying all of the things that happened to people when they first saw this movie, I think it's better if you guys just listen to people in 1973 and how chaotic and crazy it all was.
My experience with this movie has been incredible, especially with people fainting. Halfway through the movie, the movie starts getting quite violent, and people get quite unusual reactions, and we have a lot of people throwing up and a lot of people shuddering. But the thing that really surprises me is people faint. I mean, I've never in my life known a movie where people would faint. I mean, it's hard to make people faint.
If she ain't out here, he will.
Uniformed guards were hired in all instances to keep thoroughfares clear and prevent violation of the lines.
Form a more orderly line. You're blocking the sidewalk.
It's something I never saw in my whole entire life. This is something different. And I went to a lot of movies, but I never seen nothing like this in myself.
Do you remember what it was, what scene it was that affected you so much?
Convulsions, when she took convulsions. Because I have a little girl, and it was like watching my little girl. I think it's disgusting.
Why?
I don't know, it doesn't, it doesn't make me want to get sick like everybody says. My legs are just going, meh. Well, I'm a Catholic. It makes me want to go to church.
And the movie, as you guys saw, had a huge cultural impact, and it still does today. I mean, today people still even go visit the Exorcist steps in Georgetown in Washington, D.C. I myself went to visit the Exorcist steps, and it does have a haunting vibe to it. It was awesome. And I just think it's crazy that so many of them fainted and had attacks watching this movie, because I wonder how they would react to movies today. And now, it's a perfect time to introduce my conversation with my two friends, Denise and Daniela, because we talked about this movie and talked about how scary we think it is and other interesting topics within the movie. So here you guys go, enjoy. Hi guys, and welcome to this segment of Behind the Movies, where I'm joined by my two really awesome friends, Denise and Daniela.
Hi. Hi.
And today we're going to be talking about The Exorcist, and we're going to go deep into The Exorcist and talk spoilers. So if you haven't seen the movie, go right now to HBO Max. As of the day we're recording this, it's available on there. Form your own opinions, watch the movie, do all of that, and then come back to this podcast if you're interested in listening to our in-depth thoughts. And we've all seen The Exorcist, obviously, and I'm very interested in knowing why you guys wanted to watch The Exorcist. Like, what was the reason you wanted to watch it? Was it something that you heard?
I feel like we've all really been hearing that, like, oh, it's so scary since, like, when it came out, how people were fainting in the theaters and stuff. So, like, that's probably, like, I watched it out of curiosity to see, like, how scary it really was. And, yeah, like, I enjoyed it. It wasn't, like, super bad. It was good.
I remember one time, it was a few years ago when I was in class, one of my teachers brought it up because we were talking about horror movies in the class, and he was saying how at the time that it came out, it was one of the scariest movies that had come out, and I remember watching it with my friend, and I think because I watched it with my friend, we ended up making more fun of it than actually being scared, because that's usually how those experiences go when you watch a horror movie with a friend. But I found it more gross than scary. I wasn't really scared when I watched it. So that was
Also
my
reminds me that
experience.
people were like, "Oh my God, it's a curse," and I was like,
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
"Yeah."
Yeah, so many people talk about that. I remember like a few years back, a neighbor of ours, like he went to see The Exorcist in the theater, and I remember I was like, "Oh my God, that's so crazy!" Because I obviously don't know anyone who personally that has done that, like my friends, because we're all the same age. And then he told me that he like took his girlfriend to see the movie, and it was like one of their first dates, which I think is so funny because it's probably not a movie you want to see on a first date, because it's like, especially at the
That's
time.
gross.
Yeah, and then he said that like something that like whatever he like didn't he ended up driving home alone because her parents ended up picking her up because they just weren't comfortable with him taking him to her house or whatever. And he said that like he avoided going through the streets that were completely dark because he was terrified. And I remember like that story stuck with me for so long because he always told me that to this day when he sees this dark street he doesn't want to pass by there because he remembers that night. And I was like, is it really that scary? And
yeah, I think it was more like the stigma. I don't see it. I think it's more like the whole like people making it seem more scary than it is, and then when you go watching it, you expect something like, oh no, but then it turns out it's not. I guess it's just the idea of the movie itself that scared people in that time. Like, oh, a little girl getting like possessed. That's like,
yeah,
but
and
it
like
really wasn't.
how like in that time, yeah, exactly. Like back then, that's like the scariest that they had. You know, like it would of course it's gonna be like horrifying to them. Like they've never seen anything else, and like the whole idea of like the devil, and people were like really religious back then, and like still are, but like it was more like, you know, common. And people were like,
It
"Oh my
wasn't
God!"
seen in movies, like it wasn't seen in movies. Like, oh, they're like doing that.
Yeah, the whole like devil and Satan thing like was like very taboo back then, I guess you could say. And now it's like more common. Like people talk about it actually.
Yeah, I feel like like you guys said it was like the first of its kind. And I wonder like what you guys think about this, because I've always thought, because I like this movie a lot. I really like this movie, and I don't think it's scary, but I do think it's frightening. Like I feel like there's something about it that like still like that sometimes like when I think about it I'm like, oh, I think that like the concept itself is very scary. And I've always thought about it if this movie came out today, because I feel like there's so many movies nowadays that are really inspired by that movie. Like The Conjuring, I feel like it's not a ripoff because I like The Conjuring, but a lot of what that movie does is kind of what The Exorcist did, and I feel like it was really inspired by that. Like, I feel like a bunch of possession movies are like that, but I think genuinely if this movie came out today, it wouldn't have been as, like, popular as it is now, because, like, Denise, you said that you and your friend, like, you guys were laughing at it, and I feel like that's a valid point, because I feel like some of the things that the movie did are, like, laughable at this point sometimes, like, just because I think, like, the way like movies are made now is so different, and it's not because I'm not trying to say that it's like aged badly, because I think I mean I do still find enjoyment with it, but I think the movie, if it would have come out today, would have been a completely different experience, and I wonder like what you guys have to think about that.
Well, I think the point that you brought up, that it like it was the beginning for a lot of the movies, or how did you say it? You said that it was like the basis for a lot of possession movies now. I think like that's the reason why at the time it was so scary, because nothing had ever come out like that before. But I do agree that maybe if it would have been made today, but like with the effects that we have today, and like with like the basically all of the things that we use now to make movies, I think it would have been scary today. But in itself, the way that it is now, it's not scary now, obviously, because we've seen stuff like that nowadays that's worse than what that movie had.
Yeah, it's a pretty gory movie. So like how you said with like the effects, it would totally amp it up and make it like way creepier if like it had today's effects and stuff. But like there's a lot of like possession and like devil movies. So like of course today like we're so desensitized to it, so we would be like, oh, like whatever. But
that's another thing that you mentioned, that it's really gory, and it is like for the time it was. It has a lot, like even now I've seen a lot of movies, and when I watched, like I was squirming a little bit in my seat because there was some parts that were like kind of like really gross.
But she was getting stabbed, and like when she stabbed, she was like getting the scissor and like stabbing herself down there.
Oh my God, that made me literally like, cause ew.
Like like the makeup and like the vomit, it's just like it was really gross. I was like, please.
I mean,
and I still think that
they did do a good job.
That they did a good job. Yeah, because like we're still like disgusted by that, and like that movie that came out in the 70s. So I think they did a really good job there. And like I genuinely, like, even if I don't find the movie scary, I still really enjoy the movie, and I'm because you guys have said that you don't find the movie scary, but is there any scene that you still find scary? Because I feel like there still has to be a scene. I mean, it's a horror movie. I feel like everybody
For me,
has a scene.
the scariest part is like the hospital scene. Like that scene was so gross just because it was so intense. And, like the machinery was really scary. They stuck a needle in her throat. And it was like, and the blood was like squirming out and stuff. It was like really weird. And like it was just scary. Like the technology back then in hospitals like was literally horrifying. I don't know how people like got like how they could go through that. That was so scary.
Something that I'm gonna say might scare you more, because I literally found this out recently when I was like looking stuff about the movie. But one of the guys, and I think he's one of the radiologists, is that what they're called, the people that do the scans or whatever? His name is Paul Bateson, and he's actually a murderer. Like I think like a year after the movie came out, like they arrested him. I think he murdered. Yeah, and like he was hired because the director of the movie saw because he actually worked at a hospital and saw him and thought he would be perfect because it was a small role. And I think that makes it scarier now knowing that he murdered. I don't know how many people he murdered. I think I read like he was convicted for like 5, but like there could have been more. You know how a bunch of these serial killers like it's not official, but isn't that gross?
Yeah, that's really scary. Think about it. Yeah, and like he was like right next to that little girl doing all those like things to her, and like obviously it was fake what he was doing to her, but like
but still it's like disturbing.
But he was in the presence of like all of that.
Yeah, it's really, really disturbing. I remember when I read that, I was like, ew, that's gross. For me, what's scary, it's not really a scene, it's just the thing that keeps popping up. I don't know what the demon is called, and the white-faced demon, do you know what I'm talking about? That keeps popping up, like, randomly, like, it's really small. Because I remember the first time I saw it, like, I remember, because I saw this movie pretty young, and the first time I saw it, I remember it scared me so much, the white-faced demon. I think it came out, like, it comes out a couple of times in the hospital, I think, in the kitchen, and somewhere, I think somewhere near the end when the exorcism is happening, but I remember, like, it popping up, like, it was
my
like
God,
nanoseconds,
yes, I
like,
just
literally
searched it
nanoseconds,
up.
that if you blink, you missed it, and I remember when it scared me so much, because I kept thinking,
I searched it up, Pazuzu? No, Pazuzu?
Yes, something like that.
Okay, yeah, now that you like said it and I'm seeing the picture now, yeah,
that scared me, and I remember
that's ugly.
Picture really fast. I want to see.
Yeah, look it up. Yeah, it's super, super scary. It's just like it's not really a scene, but every time that thing came out, like I remember being really scared because I saw this movie young, and I remember I told my mom, like I kept thinking I made it up in my head because I told my mom, oh, did you see that? Because I remember the first time I saw it, she didn't see it. Because I'm telling you, if you blink, I feel like you miss it so much, and it scared me. And like the movie has like a bunch of subliminal like images like that.
And, yes, I remember now. She's scary.
Yeah, she's scary. I don't like her.
Yeah, that demon is scary.
Yeah, and also I remember I've always found the exorcism scene scary because I feel like the exorcism scene is low-key anticlimactic in today's standards of like exorcism scenes because I feel like not a lot happens, but I still think I still really like it, and I'll get to that later on. But like I remember when they kept saying like the power of Christ compels you, like they said it like 20 times, and it gave me so much anxiety because they just kept saying it and nothing would happen. I think like she started getting cuts on her like legs and stuff, and it gave me so much anxiety because these people were doing so much and nothing was happening.
Yeah, I remember that scene did give me a little bit of anxiety.
Yeah, I was like, when is it gonna stop? And like she kept on rising up, you know. And then also when the priest died, I remember like I was like, oh, how are they gonna get out of this one now? Because the other one wasn't as experienced. I was like,
what are we gonna do now?
Yeah, they're doomed. I actually want to go back to what Daniela said about the hospital because that's actually one of my favorite parts of the movie. Not the actual hospital scene, but like I think we can all agree that scene felt pretty realistic, at least in my point of view. Like it felt really realistic when when the needle was going through. And what I really like about this movie,
scarier as well. Like like it feels so realistic.
Yeah, it feels very realistic. Like I remember every single time that I've seen this movie, I feel like it's so different from today's standards of horror because I feel like in today's horror movies, like I'm just gonna take The Conjuring for example because it's kind of the comparison that I keep going to. I love that movie to death. That movie's like one of my favorite movies ever, and also the sequel. But I feel like that movie is very fast-paced where like there's a girl, she has like weird things going on. The parents are like, oh, let's call the Exorcist because that's the first thing that they can think of. Then they rush and like, I don't know, I feel like it's very, very fast where I feel like in this movie, it takes a realistic approach, because the mom is like, what's going on with her? Let's take her to the hospital. Because in her brain, she doesn't associate like, oh, it could be a demon type thing. Like, I feel like movies nowadays make it kind of simpler for the plot, because I feel like, honestly, like, realistically, if your child is puking and doing like a bunch of weird things, you're gonna think, oh, what's wrong with her? Like, let me take her to the hospital. And I've always liked that this movie does that, because I don't think many other horror movies do that. I think a lot of them are just like, let's just call the nearby Exorcist. And I feel like that's not really realistic in my opinion. So I've always really liked that about it.
Like kind of resorting to the Exorcist as the final option instead of like immediately saying, oh yeah,
like, hey, let's call them.
My child's possessed. Let's just call the Exorcist right now. Just having an Exorcist like on standby, like, hey.
Yeah.
It's a kind of like lazy to like automatically just like go.
That's
to,
exactly what I was gonna say now. I feel like that's because a lot of people, and I could also be guilty of this too, consider the movie to be slow. But I think sometimes when you watch a movie, I know it's hard because we don't live in the 70s, but like I sometimes try to insert myself in like when this movie came out. Movies nowadays are so fast paced to the point where like they don't let you breathe. And I feel like this movie sometimes could be a little, I feel like it could really slow down. And like, but it kind of lets me think, and put myself in the character's place, because I think of the mom and I'm like, I really like that it wasn't super fast paced and she wasn't like all over the place, like, oh, we have to go get this exorcist, we have to go get this, like you said, it was the last resort. And I think by doing that, it made it more realistic. And I don't know, this movie just has like such a realistic vibes to it. And I think a big reason was because the movie is based on a true events, whether you believe it or not, like that's up to your point of view or whatever. But the person that wrote this movie is inspired by a book that's based on The Exorcist, which was about the real case from 1954. And the same person that wrote the book and investigated the case wrote the movie. And I think for that reason, it feels so realistic, because if they would have gotten another screenwriter to base it off the book, I feel like it could have felt a little bit not realistic and just fake. And I think by doing that, it shows in the script, in the movie.
Yeah, I agree.
I think it is, like you said, it's more realistic, because I mean, it's more like a human reaction. You wouldn't just randomly assume that your child's possessed by a demon if they're showing some weird signs. Like, you would think they were sick first.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I agree with what you said.
I have a question, and it's something that I've never really understood about the movie, and I've seen this movie like honestly more times than I can count. And if you guys can answer this, I would love this. But you guys remember the opening scene when they're in Iraq? First of all, like, what do you think about that scene? Because I really like that opening scene, but I've heard some people say that they don't like it. So what do you guys think?
I actually really liked it when like I first watched it, and the first time I ever watched The Exorcist, I was kind of confused because I was like, this like reminds me of Indiana Jones. I was like, whoa, what is this? And then it was pretty interesting, and all of a sudden like we're like in Boston, and I'm like, what? But like I liked it. That was cool. And like I see like the way it's like connected, kind of like I can understand. I don't think it really bothers me though. It just like I like it.
Yeah, because at the beginning, like he finds like an artifact, and yeah, it does give me Indiana Jones vibes, because they're like looking at something, and he finds the artifact, and it's like, I'm pretty sure that the thing that he finds is the demon that comes out in the movie, the white-faced demon, whatever it's called, type.
Mountain, and like you see like that, like the statue. Is that what it is, right? Like,
yes, yeah, I'm pretty sure it's that. Yeah, but my question is that what possessed Regan? Because
that's what I was just about to ask. Like, is the scene in the beginning connected to like her and her story? Because I thought it was.
Like, yeah, I don't know, like, yeah, like what did possess her? And like, is that old man like the priest that was helping the other priest?
Yeah, right. Yes, yeah, that was him. Yeah, that was him. Yeah.
It's like, I mean, I can see what people were kind of like annoyed with it, because it's kind of like they didn't really explain it that well. Like, is that what like possessed her? Like, what was it? Like, how?
I thought that the reason for including that opening scene was to show the connection. Like, oh, this artifact will somehow be connected. Like,
and how did she come in contact with that artifact for her to get possessed?
Like, because there's a scene like early on before she gets possessed where she's like showing her mom the Ouija board. So I've always assumed that it was like she was playing with the Ouija board, and like I mean, you know how that goes. Like some demon came and like went on her or whatever. But, like, I wonder if it's that same demon, because I think he took the artifact with him. I can't remember now if he took it. But, like
leave it at the house they were living in? Like, why would that, like, how would that be the same demon?
it's just I don't know. Like, I've genuinely wondered what possessed her, because for a long time I thought it was the devil, honestly, because you know how people say it's the scariest movie ever, and I'm like, oh, the devil had to possess her, but I don't think the devil does that, so I think that's the devil's job. But yeah, I just don't, like, I don't know what possessed her, but I like the opening scene, and there's like a really cool shot, and like it always gives me so much tension.
I don't know. I was gonna say, now that you were talking about that I like the shot of the sun, like the sun turning red. I don't know if that's the one you're gonna say, but I like that shot.
No, it's like a little bit like, it's a little bit after that. He has the artifact with him, the priest, and he just looks at the clock because I lie. The clock stops working, and he like turns around and he looks at it, and I don't know why that scene is always giving me so much tension, because there's no music playing, it's just silent, and I it's just like telling the audience like, oh, something bad is gonna happen here, and yeah,
that you mentioned the silence is like, I guess it's because of the silence that makes it like a little bit uneasy. So it's nice that they used that, like they didn't use any sound to like make it scary. They just kind of relied on silence.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of silence in the movie, because there's obviously like a score that plays, which I absolutely like, but I think it's like sometimes the scariest scenes are the ones where there's no noise, and it's just like you get to think about it. And something that I really like about this movie too is that for a lot of the, I guess you could say, jump scares and like scary parts, it cuts really fast. Like, I remember the spider walk scene where she's walking down the stairs. It cuts really fast. Like, I don't remember ever seeing the reaction of her mom or the people present. Like, maybe if they were there, it was probably for like a few seconds, but I like that they didn't show the reactions that much, because I feel like it was more effective in the audience themselves having to like have that in them. Like you just saw something really crazy, it stopped, and then you just have to kind of think about it in your own head, and I think doing that was way more effective. And that's why I think the few jump scares that there are, because I don't think there are a lot of jump scares in this movie, work so well versus some in this movie versus some in movies today, because I feel like today they just get so tiring because it's just like lingers on. Is there anything interesting or that shocked you about the movie going into it? Like, you thought it was going to be one thing and it ended up being another?
Yeah, I guess like the opening scene, I was like confused, and then like it just like completely changed to something else, like that like part. And then maybe like the priest's death, I guess, like that was like pretty, like I was like, oh, he'll be safe, and then he's like, no, maybe that.
Oh yeah, the ending took me by surprise. I was like, I don't know, because you assume like sometimes in horror movies that the ending sometimes, but you know, it ends like not happy, but like everything's resolved. And that's, at least I did not expect that ending when I watched it. I didn't know that spoiler that the priest like died. So it was a surprise that he did, and I kind of like was like, no way, he's not dead. Like, that's just, it's so like, okay, I guess.
Yeah, and I like that they killed both of the priests. I mean, one of them technically wasn't killed; he like sacrificed himself. But I like that they both died, because I feel like there's this kind of protection that's given to them, because you know they're religious and they're priests, like they're people of God. But I like that they die because it shows that it can happen to anyone almost. And also, I think the mom being an actress, it doesn't play a huge role in the movie. I could sometimes say that I feel like it's unnecessary having her be an actress, because I think what that whole brings, sometimes I'm like, I mean, I don't really care. Like, it has some character moments, but it's like fine. But I also think sometimes her being an actress, she has money. I mean, actresses have money. Like, they're at the top. Yet she's scrambling around hospital to hospital in the worst hospitals, because I think there's a line where she's like, I can't find any good hospital anywhere. And her daughter is still dying, and like so many things are happening. So I think by doing that with the priest and the mom, it shows that like, hey, it can happen to anyone. It can happen to the richest person ever. It can happen to these godlike people, literally. So I think that makes it scary too. And I feel like it also could be why so many people had like crazy reactions watching it.
Because they weren't expecting like, oh, the priest is gonna resolve everything, or like they're gonna fix everything, but no, like they ended up both like just dying.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I haven't seen too many movies, like I can't think of too many similar movies to The Exorcist, but I feel like this one was obviously shocking, obviously based on what a lot of people say, and I do think a huge reason why is because nobody was safe in it, I mean, and especially it was happening to a little girl, and kids are usually pretty safe in horror movies.
Yeah.
And
That's what
this,
made it, like all like the gory scenes more like uncomfortable. That like a little girl was going through all of this,
yeah.
and like all these things are being said about her. Like the demon was like saying like really like what's the word? Very
vulgar
stuff. Yeah, exactly. Like towards a little kid, and it was just like kind of like uncomfy. So I was like,
one thing that I wasn't expecting is like, since it was a movie, like an older movie, I was expecting like tacky like effects. But it was actually not as bad as I thought it would be. It like we talked about before, it was actually pretty gross and just it was like bloody, and it didn't look so like tacky as I thought it would.
And the makeup was good too. Like this.
Yeah, the makeup they did on her was really, really good.
Yeah, and I feel like it stays with you, like that face that she makes. Like,
yeah. Oh, when I think about like the name of the movie, I always associate the like her face like pale and like the scars on her face. Like I always think about that.
Where her head turns around. I always remember that scene.
Oh yeah,
so
and when she pukes, oh my god.
Yeah.
I always think about that.
Her face progressively got worse as the movie like progressed. Like,
yeah, they did a good job with that. Yeah.
Like yeah, like her makeup just.
I also think the actress Linda Blair like did a really good job, because like I don't know how old she was when she did the movie, but she couldn't have been that old. Like she was obviously a kid, and I think she did a really good job. And I wonder if like it was traumatizing for her, because I obviously know that filming and like the final thing is completely different. Like a lot of kid actors say that like it's not scary when they work on the movie, but like I don't know. Like I mean, especially because there's a bunch of things that like the set was haunted and like all of that. Like I wonder how that experience was for her, because she was so young. And
also I feel like maybe it would have been a lot more different like for a child to work back then. Like the environment of working in movies back then would have been different to like now, how they have more protection and more laws like towards them.
Yeah.
So like, I'm pretty sure it was kind of like maybe intense for her too.
Yeah.
And maybe like a lot of hours and stuff. And
especially with like how many bad words there are in it. Like
and everything.
Yeah.
Like with the stuff of like the curse and everything, that would have been really scary too. Like knowing like people are talking about like, oh, there's a curse like among us or whatever. So yeah.
Obviously, if stuff starts happening around set and you're filming a horror movie, that's gonna like as a kid, you're probably like, okay,
yeah, I was gonna say,
scary.
I wonder if like any friends of hers or something like didn't want to hang out with her because like there was some stigma around the movie. Because like I feel like honestly, like even family members might have been like, girl, like that's a bit
get away from me.
Yeah, get away from me.
I mean, you already hear about a curse on set, and you're like, get it away from me.
Yeah. Something that surprised me about the movie is that, okay, the movie's called The Exorcist, and the exorcism happens, I think, honestly, in like the last 15 minutes of the movie.
Yeah.
I went into it literally thinking, we're gonna get the exorcism like right then. And I think it's because like of that mentality that I was talking about before. Movies nowadays are so fast, and like they do everything so quick. And this movie took so long. I was like, when is the exorcism gonna happen? And I genuinely don't even think the exorcism is the best part of the movie. I think what they do there is fine, but like I was very surprised that I felt like the exorcism itself was kind of like on the backbone of the movie, where like the movie's called The Exorcist, so you're like, oh crap, it's gonna be all revolving around this. But I genuinely think the movie has like, I think the movie honestly revolves around a lot around Father Caress, I think that's his name, like the one that ends up sacrificing himself. And I didn't expect that at all, because I was like I feel like it started as a side plot, but to me that's always been kind of like a big thing in the movie, and it's like the biggest part of it, honestly, at least for me. That's always surprised me,
because they probably just, I mean, they wanted to show his like his side of the story, so that when he dies, like his death makes more of an impact.
Yeah,
I guess so.
Also, I think like the movie was really bold in making like the father have like sins, I guess, and have a lot of because he goes through the struggle with faith, and I think that was really interesting that the movie did that. And the movie has a lot of like contrasting things that I noticed when I like last saw it. Like, for example, the father, like the priest, he's having doubts about his faith, and I think that's also a really big part of the movie, because the mom, I'm pretty sure, is an atheist, and like now she's faced with a situation that like people she didn't even believe in are gonna save her daughter type situation. And also I noticed that like the heroes of the movie, I guess, they wear black, and the demon, the times we see him, he's white. Like it's like very white, and you see that, and I don't know what that means, but like white is always associated with holy,
Yeah.
Yeah, and they made the demon white, and then they made these people like that are like the priests are always wearing black, and there's a lot of like dark lighting with them. Like just some other contrast that I noticed, like an old person was working with a young person, like little things like that, like obviously the good and the bad, like there's a bunch of like contrasting things here, and I don't know what that means, honestly. Like I don't know if it was the director or the writer trying to show like two sides of something, but I think that's interesting that there's like little things like that in the movie that I noticed.
Yeah.
Oh, something else that's a contrast, that's really sharp contrast. Iraq is old. It's like it looks very different, and then we cut to Washington D.C. and it's like new, it's modern. You know, I mean the modern back then.
I said Boston. Oops. I
You
thought it was in Boston the whole time. Yeah, I said Boston.
Oh, it's
I
Georgetown.
don't know why but yeah, it is. Yeah, that's right. You went to like the stairs.
Yeah, the stairs. Yeah. Which is crazy that this movie like has made stairs be so scary. Because if I see long stairs, I automatically think this movie.
It's
It's
creepy
so
also, like to see like what, like it's so long that you can't see what's up there. And then
yeah.
like ew.
Yeah.
Like you said, the whole like actual exorcism scene was anticlimactic. I think it was just like building up, but it was like more the other parts in the movie before that were more like engaging, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, you can tell they really focus on like the like. I mean, yeah, it was scary. The exorcism scenes, like it was scary because like it was intense. Like you know, like her.
Yeah, it was intense. Yeah.
Yeah, did she stab herself and during that scene, or was it before that when she stabbed herself?
A little bit before that.
A little bit before that, yeah. And like it was intense, but I could see like how it was like way scarier, like leading up to it. You know, like the suspension and like is she gonna be okay? Like what's happening? And then yeah.
I
Also,
personally
she
thought
put herself in front of her friend, her parents. I mean, her mom's friends. I felt so embarrassed. I was like, oh my god, that's like it was just like so sad too. Like I felt really bad for her.
Yeah.
You could tell she had no control of her body by then. Like she was lost by then. Like,
Yeah, and I've always thought that like two exorcisms in the movie, because there's like, and this you guys can tell me if I'm wrong or this is stupid, but like there's the exorcism of Regan, and then there's like I always considered it kind of like an exorcism of Father, what's his name, Father Karras, Karras, because like I just considered like at least that happened because he gets possessed for like even just a split moment, and I've always thought that the split moment when he's possessed, is like more impactful and scarier and crazier than Regan's exorcism, which I think is shocking because obviously the movie's like building up to Regan's exorcism, and I feel like what shocked me and what like I guess impacted me more was his exorcism and like and just his sacrifice. I think that honestly like he stole the show. Like I feel like this wasn't his movie and he like came in there and he just stole it, and yeah.
Also, like the scene where like after he died, his friend came to like pick up his like see where he died. Like, yeah, that was just like a pretty interesting scene, I guess. And like when she gave him like the necklace.
Yeah, and I think I don't like correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think he cared that much about him when he was alive. And I think it's like interesting that when he died.
Didn't they have like some like problems or something? Like it was
yeah,
something like
I'm pretty sure. At least they hadn't like I don't know something. And I think like when he came, he was like all like, oh my god, I'm so sad. I mean, obviously his friend died, but I think it's like it's also showing that like sometimes like we don't value things like when we have them.
Didn't they have like a fight about like him doubting his religion or something like that? Like I feel like wasn't it something around that because he was also a priest too or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. Is there something that if you could make the movie you would change?
Honestly, I don't think so because I feel like it's just like it's so like iconic.
Yeah.
And like just like I don't know, like there's like not much that I would change because it's like it was made for like its time.
Mm-hmm.
If anything, like I would just like maybe like adapt it to now if I was making it for now, like for like this century.
Yeah.
I just feel like it's like it's good how it is personally. I think.
I guess the thing that we talked about that the whole part in the beginning doesn't connect, and we like I wouldn't if I could like change something, I would make it like maybe connect or at least make it so that like little plot points that don't make sense like they connect. I guess.
Yeah, explain how, like, what possessed her, like, you know, like, maybe, like, make it, not, like, easier to understand what possessed her, because, like, it wasn't, like, you were, like,
it wasn't confusing,
Yeah, and I feel like also, I mean, it does trigger me a little bit that we don't know, but also I feel like the unknown is also scarier, because, who knows, maybe
I mean, I think that's, like, the whole point of why it's so scary, because it's like a little girl getting possessed by something unknown, and that's why people were so scared of it. But still, like, it could be a little bit more connected with the beginning.
Yeah, I also don't know if I would change anything, because I feel like this movie and a lot of old movies and movies now, I feel like they're like time capsules of like a specific time period. And that's why I hope they don't adapt this, because this movie has like 2 sequels. I really like the third one. I like it. I hope Hollywood doesn't touch it, because although we were talking about how like horror is so different nowadays, I feel like just adapting it would ruin like the magic of the first one and the whole thing regarding it, like just and the whole thing about it. So yeah, I think if I could change something, I'd also change the beginning, because I like it. I'm a fan of it. I think it's pretty, like, it's a pretty shot. I like some stuff, but I feel like it sometimes doesn't connect, and it's like a really sharp contrast, because you're like, because they don't ever go back there, do they?
To where? To the house?
No, to Iraq. No, right? Like the movie's just like in Georgetown. Yeah. And I'm very interested in you guys answering this, because this movie has a lot of hype regarding it. It's like one of those cult classics everybody talks about. Do you guys think that sometimes hype ruins the movie? And did that happen for you with this movie? Because I know we've talked really positively about it, but like, do you think having so much hype and having so much stigma around a movie could like really affect how people look at it after?
I don't know.
Yeah, but I mean, in the case of this movie, even though people would tell me, like, or at least older people, like from older generations, that when they watched it, they were scared of it. When they would tell me, I went in expecting like something scary, but it didn't like ruin my experience with the movie. I still thought, I still enjoyed watching it. I wasn't like super disappointed, because I understand like it's an older movie, but sometimes hype, I guess in like today's world, sometimes hype does ruin movies, because you go in expecting something like amazing and you're kind of disappointed. But
Yeah, I agree with that. I definitely got like something completely different than I expected with this movie. I think, to me at least, the movie is more like psychologically scary than it is like in your face scary. I guess that's how I would say it. But I feel like, because it didn't happen in my case and not in your cases, but I feel like hype could sometimes ruin the movie. Like, I wonder how future generations will talk about this movie, because like I just wonder how it'll continue aging, because it's aged pretty well. Like, a lot of people still talk really highly about this movie, but I know a handful of people that like they just find it boring, and they just don't enjoy it. And I think a lot of it is because of that hype that it's the scariest movie of all time. And there's even a cut called like the version you've never seen, like that it's like the scariest apparently. And I think when you label a movie like that, you're setting up like such high standards of horror and of scariness. And I also think labeling something as scary is wrong, because obviously it's a horror movie, but scary is so different, because what scares me might not scare you guys. And I think just labeling this movie as scariest could let people down. And I understand why it's labeled as that, but I also think it could hurt it in the future, in my opinion, because I think still some people today, like from our generation, don't enjoy it as much as other generations.
Sometimes like getting your hopes up so high, and then you get to like the movie is like not like that. It doesn't like exceed your expectations. You're kind of like bummed out about it, but it doesn't like taint the movie completely. It's just like
And like how you said, it's you said it was more like psychological, and it's different than psychological horror now, because I don't know, just like, for example, nowadays when you think like psychological horror, like, it's movies like Get Out and stuff like that. But then I don't know, like The Exorcist, it's weird how we consider it psychological horror when it has so much like bloody stuff and stuff. And usually when you think psychological horror, it's more like mental stuff, not so gory. I don't know.
The thing that always stuck with me is that like idea of like faith and just like circling around in your own head, because we're so like focused on this priest, and we're like put into the situation as an audience, and like that's always what I can think of, because I think he's going through like a psychological, like, I feel like the whole movie is like, not the whole movie because there's obviously more to it, but I feel like a lot about the movie is his psychological state of mind and what he thinks about. And I think, yeah, like you said, psychological back then and today is completely different. I feel like today, sometimes, like, this is no shade to filmmakers today, but I feel like today's filmmakers are like I feel like they have to say something really deep, and they have to say something that's like like, I don't know, it's gonna get people raving and talking about it. And I kind of like sometimes when I go back to these movies from like the 90s, the 80s, and the 70s, these psychological movies that they get you thinking, but it's I don't know
like
if I make
thrown
it.
in your face, I guess. Like,
Yeah, it's like not so thrown in your face.
It's like a little bit subtle.
Yeah. I just like.
Is there any other example, or like how you said in this movie, it's a priest and he's like questioning his faith. Is there any like other movie that you can think of, like off the top of your head, right? Like that's similar to that right now, or not right now, but like that's come out in the recent years? Because I can't really think of any.
Yeah, I'm trying to think and I can't. Like nothing comes to mind.
I think
any other famous one, like.
Well, are you talking about a movie like that's come out now, or like just any?
Yeah, or like any, like.
Because I think of a First Reformed. Is that A24? It kind of talks about that. That movie's really good. It also deals with the whole like faith idea and like sinning, and I think that movie's really good. But I can't think of any more off the top of my head.
Maybe Mother.
It is interesting how like the movie does tackle that, how you said that he's a priest and like it tackles his side of the story.
Yeah, Denise, I think you cracked why I really like this movie. It's because it's just subtle. It's not like, even though there's gore and stuff, I think if you time when it's gory and there's like disgusting scenes, I don't even think it would make half of the movie, honestly. Like, I don't think that's the big part about this movie, and that's why I think I like it, and I think a lot of people like it. So yeah.
Yeah, like, at the end of the day, like psychological horror, like what's the scariest is like what's closest to home and like closest to your fears.
Yeah.
So like, and if it's like subtlety too, like like silence is loud. So like, like it's eerie. So yeah, it makes sense that yeah. Like when you guys asked about a movie that like might be similar, I was thinking maybe like Mother.
Yeah, Jennifer Lawrence, right?
Yeah, like I could see I can see it, but like not really. I don't know, maybe.
Yeah, that one's crazy. That's a whole episode, honestly. There's like so much to talk about with that movie.
That one could be interpreted like so many different ways.
Yes, yeah, it's literally crazy. Yeah.
Also, I guess you could say the same with this one. No, not really. Like it can be interpreted some ways, but not like it had like you can like it has different messages too. Like you could say for this.
I think a part where you can like interpret it in different ways is the ending, and I'm curious what you guys think about this, because at the end, Regan, she like hugs. I can't remember who she hugs. She hugs someone, and like for a second. What?
Like the priest's friends.
I think so. Yeah, probably. But she hugs them, and like she has a super cute face, because I think Linda Blair's like, she's so pretty, and she's like, her face like she's glowing, and then like I think the camera like inserts just like her face, and like I for a second there I was like, crap, she's gonna kill this dude. Like the demon is still in there, and like
I thought so too. Yeah.
Yeah, and like some people think, because her mother said that she doesn't remember anything, but a part of me has always thought that she does remember it, like, or that the demon is still somehow in there,
somewhere
like,
there.
Yeah,
because they wouldn't have like shown that shot if it didn't mean something.
And like that even adds like to like what makes it scary, because it's like subtle. You're like, what's
exactly
and you're
like is she still
unknown? Yeah,
like you literally never know, and you just keep thinking about it, like, what is she doing right now? Because is that demon still in her? And then if you think about it that way, it kind of makes it sad, because if the demon would still be in there and she's still a little bit evil, it kind of makes the priest sacrifice for nothing. Yeah.
That's sad.
So
let's
I mean,
hope
I guess
the demon is out.
It's just the way that you look at it. Like either like the priest sacrifice meant something and she's normal now, or it didn't mean anything and she still has it.
I will be honest, I like the sacrifice. I said I really like that part of the whole scene, but like I've always thought it was kind of the easy way out. I was like, that was kind of easy. Why didn't they just do that at the beginning? Like, obviously they wouldn't have a movie, but it was so easy. So that's why there's a part of me that's always like, I feel like
the ending did feel kind of like, okay, I guess like that's over. It just ended like that.
Also, like the whole director's death was kind of very random. Like I feel like the movie could have kept on going without that death, because like, it was just like not like it was unnecessary. Really, like it didn't like add anything.
Yeah,
to
I agree. Yeah.
Except for the fact that maybe like the demon was getting stronger in her, like that, like maybe that, and like, but like it was kind of like unnecessary too.
Yeah, I agree.
Like, did they ever like explain like how by him sacrificing himself it would kill the demon?
I don't remember.
It's because I'm pretty sure she had a necklace or something, and he got the necklace and put it on him. I think.
Because I'm like thinking,
Yeah.
I'm like, if he sacrificed himself, it's because like he knew that it would somehow, like, or did he?
I don't think he knew. I think that's what makes the sacrifice
I think he just
better.
Yeah, I think
he like
killed himself.
because his whole life I think he was like blaming himself because he couldn't help his mom. He was like poor, and I
He
even think
didn't know.
something that this guy, a priest, like he's not living well. Like he's literally in poverty, surrounded by poverty. But I just think that's what makes the sacrifice better because he had no idea if that was gonna work. I mean,
if that would work. What if it didn't? What if it didn't? He was like, peace out, and nothing happened. I'm pretty sure the demon just flew out of him and went back into her.
Yeah. That's always how I've thought about it though. Like the demon just flies out and he's like, what do I do now?
What do I do? I'm dead now.
Yeah. Yeah, because if you think about it, honestly, if they would have killed the girl in like the first 10 minutes, like the movie would have ended because demon.
Yeah.
I think we can all agree that whether you're a fan of The Exorcist or not, whether you don't find it scary at all, or if you think it's foolish, if you love it, it's still one of the most famous movies of all time, and I think it will continue to do so because of its impact, because of the impact that it's had on billions of people. And I'm really glad that I got to have this discussion with you, Denise and Daniela. It was awesome because we never talked about The Exorcist like this, so this was a lot of fun because this is one of my favorite horror movies and I like talking to you guys about it, so thank you very much.
Thank you for having us. Yeah.
Thank you guys so much for listening to that conversation. And again, thank you so much to my two friends. That's just amazing that this movie that the studio believed was going to completely flop is still in conversation today, as you guys are obviously hearing right now. And yeah, and I just want to thank everybody who participated in it, such as Denise, Daniela, and some awesome fellow creators that you heard at the beginning, such as Fritzky, Anna, and Art. Thank you so much for being a part of this podcast because it added a lot to the conversation. And make sure to check out their channels. They will be linked down below in the YouTube video. If you guys are interested, head on over to YouTube on Sunday to check out their links. And yeah, and I'll see you guys next week where we'll be discussing another film in Behind the Movie.